welcome back to Nia Natters. This is episode 6, called The Power of Self-Awareness, Unlocking Your Potential. So this will just basically be going through defining what self-awareness is, discussing how important it is, and then just bringing up tools for how to build self-awareness, the benefits of it, along with the challenges and solutions of the challenges. And then we will take some questions at the end, as we always do. So I think it's very important to know the definition of self-awareness. So to me, this is understanding your thoughts, emotions, and actions, but also understanding why you think a certain way. So obviously that is understanding your thoughts, but what I mean is like doing a deeper analysis on yourself about what generated those thoughts in the first place, whether it was something that you believe because maybe someone earlier in your life told you that, or it was because of an experience that happened, and so because you think that way, it triggers an emotion, which then triggers an action, all consequently, because there's never a time where you do an action without there being some sort of thought or emotion behind it. So even though your body could generate an unconscious action, it's always because your action was triggered by something that you thought or felt in that moment for you to act that way. And I think this is really important to know about yourself so that you can then develop yourself and improve yourself by maybe in the future not acting that way or not thinking that way, therefore not feeling that way. Self-awareness is really good because it's very important in terms of personal growth, relationships, decision making. For example, in personal growth, you can't grow without being self-aware, in my opinion, because you always need to understand yourself to a certain degree to be able to grow in a positive way. So let's just say you're very self-aware of a habit that you have. For example, let's just say my habit is biting my nails. And although this doesn't really affect me day to day, is just not a nice habit to have, in my opinion, even though I've done it since 3 years old. So the action is me biting my nails. My emotion is triggered when I'm bored or stressed or nervous, which makes me bite my nails, which is the action. And originally I was taught this habit because when I used to watch my dad bite his nails, I thought, oh, I just want to be like my dad. It's cool. I'll bite my nails. I know I was like 3 or 4 at the time, so cut me some slack. But it's really not a good habit and is really difficult to control because depending on my emotions and willpower day to day, it really does fluctuate. So if there's something like on my nails that will prevent me from biting them as easy, then I'll do that, because otherwise if I'm left to my own devices, it usually doesn't go very well unless I am not stressed or bored. So for example, over the Christmas holiday, I grew my nails really long and they went really well, and the builder gel, which is what I have on top, lasted throughout Christmas and I didn't even have one chip in it. Bring it back to work, like when the first day that I was in work, I was straight back to my nails were around my mouth. I was like testing to see any weaknesses in the nail varnish, things like that. And it just, you're unconsciously doing it, even though when you finally like realize you're doing it, it's almost a natural thing for you to do at this point. So in terms of personal growth, obviously for me it would be that to stop biting my nails, but then I have to find something that will, when I feel stressed, nervous, or bored, that I should do something else. So even though my thoughts and emotions stay the same, my actions can change. And then it might even reverse it, being like, oh, if I'm bored, then I should do this, which is an action, and therefore I will not feel bored anymore. So yeah, in terms of relationships, it's definitely a good thing to be self-aware, so that you know that when you're talking to people, you treat them to the best of your ability, and you're not acting out of a thought or emotion which creates a reaction. Because even in relationships, people might just think that you're doing something because you just wanted to do it, but actually they might not know that you're doing something out of a protective reason or something that you learnt and you didn't realise was wrong. Which is one of the things that I used to do when I first moved in with my partner. Like, in my brain, everything has to be done a certain way, and that's how I was taught. So I was then like putting that expectation onto my partner, and it was like ruining our relationship because it really wasn't that deep. But I just personally thought that it was deep. And yeah, so we're currently working on that. And then with decision making, the decision might be made impulsively based on a thought or emotion and then acting quickly on a decision, which sometimes cannot be good because you might make the wrong decision impulsively and then it might have a bad outcome, compared to if you were a bit more mindful and you stepped back, the decision could be made non-impulsively based on a reaction of unconscious self-protection, let's just say, or an unconscious action that you didn't realise that you had. So this is why being self-aware is very good, because it can work on these things such as personal growth, like we discussed, relationships like we discussed, and decision making, because it's all about being aware of how you're acting, why you're acting that way, and how it impacts yourself, your relationships, and the actions you make. So some tools for building self-awareness can be considered to, make sure that you're taking note of maybe your triggers, how you acted in a certain way, and there is nothing better to do this than journaling. So personally, I journal every day, but there are 3 ways that I came up with in terms of how you can journal to build self-awareness. So the first one, which is the one I do every day, is daily journaling. So I literally do an account of my day, what happened, how I felt, if I needed to log down how I feel about something, what I enjoyed, and then at the end I would do gratitude to say what I was thankful for that day. So it really shows me what I take note of and approve of in my days and what is the good thing of my days. So there's also something that I also use as well. I said also 3 times in the sentence then, please ignore me. But there is the journaling of, let's just say you were triggered and then you were reflecting on it. Please start reflecting on your triggers if you haven't already. But if something happened and then you thought a certain way and then you felt a certain way and then you acted a certain way unconsciously, please, when you find out that you have acted a certain way because of a trigger, write it down. Write down what you did and try and figure out how you felt at the time. And that could link you back to what you thought at the time, which is where the root of an action starts. By doing this, I think that it really gets to, like I said, the root of the issue and why you started acting that way and where it all came from, where it originated. So let's just think. When me and someone don't get along for some reason, like we've argued, we've had a disagreement, I then step back and then I think, was I in the right there? Like, do I actually support myself for saying what I said? Or was I just doing it out of stubbornness? Or because I am conditioned a certain way by my environment to think like that? Or was I being objective? Was I being subjective? What could have made me act that way, to feel that way about that topic, to think that way? So I always find doing this really gets to the bottom of how I feel and why I feel like that, which is always a good way to improve your self-awareness. The third way of doing this is my favourite thing to do when I have a bit of time, or if I've been in a slump for a few days and something's just gnawing at me, like something that I did a few days ago and is just not sitting right, or I feel especially sensitive about something, I will go on Pinterest and I will type in self-reflection questions about blah blah blah, about how I feel. And about, oh my gosh, so many questions will come up. So I just find the right type that's for me, and then I just write them down, and then I answer them, and I take hours on this. I'm not even being funny, I'm not even lying. I take hours to do this because I just want to get everything out. I want to get everything like written down out in front of me, things that I can see, and then look into them deeper, reflect again, see why I feel this way, see what triggered this, see how I can improve it, and just so that the next time that I go into a situation like that or a feeling like that, I just have a better grasp of why this is, what I could do better, how I could have handled it better, how I don't have to feel as low as I do now because of it. So those are my 3 tips for journaling that I do myself, and I really do stand by them. I enjoy doing them. I'm a writing girly, I'm a visual girly, so that's just something that I enjoy. There's also mindfulness, so meditation or mindful breathing exercises to observe your thoughts. I think I do neither of these, but I see why they are done. So meditation is a process where you sit and you try and think of nothing and clear your mind. And then if any thoughts come to the front of your head or the front of your mind, that you just try and let it float away, or you focus on it and wonder why this particular thing is something that you really strongly think about, and then you try and figure it out that way. There's also mindful breathing exercises, and this kind of links to the way that I practice mindfulness. So what I'm assuming that the mindful breathing exercises do is to perform when you're triggered. So when you're triggered, obviously you're going to instantly react to something, but the breathing exercises should train you to pause before you say something or do something after you're triggered, so the triggered bit has already been done. It just gives you chance to take a pause, take a breath, have a good think about how you're going to react, what you're going to say, how that will be perceived by the other person or other thing or situation, and whether this is the best thing that you can do. So mine is kind of like this, but most of the time it's not breathing, it's more making better choices on the build up, if that makes sense. So everything that I do is being mindful. So let's just take the example of mindful eating, because previously I used to be a lot heavier than I am now in university. Of course, as in university. I spoke a lot about my university experience in my previous podcast, so if you haven't already, then please check that out. But I read a book called Intuitive Living, I believe it's called. And it mentioned, I believe, intuitive eating. So I do recommend that book, number one. But number two, just being more in tune with your body and being more self-aware in that aspect. So it's not always about something that could be triggering you, something that you could be feeling, something you could be doing. It's more about being in tune with your body as well, which I find really helpful, because previously I used to eat to procrastinate, especially in university and when I used to study my A-levels. I used to eat if I was bored, and then I used to eat because it was a specific time of the day. So even though I wasn't hungry, I would just eat. And instead, even now, I eat 2 meals a day, quite hefty meals. Not a big fan of breakfast, but I'm adding it back in now because I've just been enjoying it. But in university, I built up a really good method for this. So I'd wake up, wait until I was hungry, and I could physically hear my stomach rumble instead of my brain going, no, you're hungry, of course you're hungry, it's 8 o'clock now, it's 8 o'clock, go get some food. And then I would go and eat after my stomach rumbled. And then I would not snack, because every single time that I felt like something sweet, I would be like, could I eat a pink lady apple right now? And if the answer was yes, then I would go and eat a pink lady apple instead, because it was sweet. And if that didn't do anything, then of course I'd go and get whatever it was that I actually fancied. But that helped me out so much with just eating for the sake of eating. And that's another form of mindfulness that is not mentioned on the basic type of mindfulness practices. So I would definitely say intuition is in there as well. But not intuition where you're acting out of what you feel is right in that moment, because you do need to take a little bit of a pause to make sure that what you're thinking at the moment isn't just a reaction. And then the third tool is feedback. So asking people around you for constructive insights. Don't get me wrong with this one. Unless you trust them a lot and you can ask them about a specific moment where you would like feedback, I do not suggest just asking anyone or everyone. This is where I think that there's a fine line between who you can ask about this, because if it was me, I wouldn't ask trusted friends, because I feel like I'm too sensitive in that area. So if they told me and I was like, oh, was I being wrong about this? Did you feel like I didn't hear you out? Or do you think that my point was valid? And they said no, and I really felt strongly about that. Then I would be like, great, thanks for nothing, But that's just a me problem. In terms of mentors, I think that is a good way to go. So self-awareness, like I said, can just span across any type of thing. Let's just take horse riding into example, I always ask my coach, what can I do better? What can I be doing better right now? What did I do wrong? Why do you think I did this? Or then I go, oh, I did this because I thought this, and therefore this triggered that, and now I know I won't do it again. And obviously with mentors, they can then guide you on how to do something better as a result of that thought or emotion, to make you feel safer but act more different, not more differently, but just differently at that time. So now we're going to move on to the benefits of self-awareness. So the first one is that there would be an improved relationship through better communication and understanding. I cannot stress this one enough. I think I over self-analyze sometimes, so this could go either way, to be honest. Like, sometimes I'm there like, oh, I did this and I said this because of this in my younger years, and you know, you have to respect that, but actually, like, no, I just need to work on that. But completely agree that self-awareness definitely builds better communication and understanding of people, because, you know, if a specific action is taking longer to get rid of because you keep getting triggered, then obviously is going to take longer to fix. And people need to be very understanding about that, because sometimes you just can't help it. You're doing all you can, and that's all there is to it. In terms of this as well, the better communication is very valid, because not only are you explaining more to other people, but it also gives you better communication with people, because once you stop doing a specific thing that might be affecting your previous communication with someone in a negative way, then from the time that you become more self-aware and realise and improve how you communicate with someone, then obviously the reciprocation will be better as well. So the second benefit is that you will have a clearer career or life decision. I completely agree with this. Self-awareness can also be used in terms of breaking your beliefs down and determining what it is that you want out of life or out of a career, what you enjoy, your strengths, being self-aware in terms of your good and bad points. You don't always have to improve on your bad points, even though there's always something to improve. But yeah, definitely you'll have a clearer career trajectory if you know how to use this to your advantage, such as being aware of what your strengths are and utilizing them in your career. In terms of like life decisions, you might have had a really rough start in life, so being self-aware and improving the bad life decisions that you've made obviously then changes it over to becoming good life decisions, and therefore you can move on and get your life together and get it moving in a better direction than it previously was. Self-awareness can be used for good or bad, and it's always good to work on something. You're never perfect, and with every different environment or situation you come across, you'll always have a particular reaction to it that you haven't seen before from yourself. So it's always good to be exposed to different things, but also make yourself more moldable. I don't even know if that's a word, but make yourself more flexible on how to deal with these things that you come across, so that, let's just say the first time you come across something, you really exaggerate and you're really anxious, and so you lash out as your action. And then you get into a situation where it's quite similar to what you've experienced before, and last time you lashed out, but you've done some work on being self-aware, and so you know why that happens. Although the situation is not exactly the same, you can always feed what you've learnt from the previous situation to adapt it to improving how you react to the current situation. Went off on a bit of a tangent there, but that's life decisions in a nutshell. So the third benefit is enhanced emotional intelligence and stress management. I feel like this is basically what I just said with the life decisions bit. You'll be more emotionally intelligent because then you know how you generally react in a specific situation, so you can tailor it to another situation that's similar but not the same. Then there's also less stress because you then know how to handle yourself in specific situations, and so are not stressed in those situations anymore when you used to be. And that's always a great thing to do. Being emotionally intelligent as well is something that once you're aware of yourself, that you can probably look around the room and be like, oh yeah, they're struggling with the same thing as me. And in a way that also improves your stress management, because you're going to be like, oh, I don't feel alone anymore with how I feel, because I know a few people are probably going through the same thing, and I really didn't need to worry about it. And then let's move on to the challenges and solutions of self-awareness. So obviously, elephant in the room, there will be difficulty facing uncomfortable truths. And we all go through that at some point. We always find a part of us that we don't like, but we feel like we can't change it. And you can, however, it's going to be really difficult. But by reframing these things as opportunities for more growth or faster growth or more extreme growth, I feel like I just said the same thing in two different ways, but you always got to look at what the outcome could be if you did manage to overcome the challenge that you found, instead of just thinking, oh no, there's no way that I can change how I am in this situation. Yes, you can, but you need to look at it in smaller chunks, and that's why goal setting is always good, because you can then really get into the nitty-gritty of a situation and make small goals and then build up to a bigger one. I had someone that I was working with in my business where they couldn't speak in front of a room, and I feel like that's quite a generic, or common should I say, feeling amongst people. And we all feel like whenever we speak that everyone's got their eyes on us and everyone's giving us 100% of their attention, so how could I possibly speak in front of this many people, blah 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 blah. I used to be the same, but just by, and this person couldn't even put their hand up to ask a question, and even though they knew that other people were wondering the same question, or that it was a valid question, it was a good question, they still couldn't do it. And I overcame this by actually breaking this down into steps. So I'm a very think too much first and then worry first and think about it later, you know what I mean? So I used to be like, right, we're going to overcome this, and I'll tell you how we do this. So the first step is to just, in a moment that you feel brave inside that room and you have a question, you put your hand up. Don't think about the effects of it. Don't think about what that means. Just put your hand up. You don't have a question. Ignore the question a second. Just put your hand up. That is your action working first. And then your emotion will come, and then your thought will come, or your thought will come and then your emotion. But sometimes you need to act first to be able to tune your thoughts and emotions to acting a specific way instead of not acting. So once you've put your hand up, obviously you can't put it back down because people will be like, well, why did they just put their hand up? So you have to keep your hand in the air, and then they'll be like, yep, how can I help? And then you ask your question. And I know people are going to be like, oh, well, it's easier to say than do. But it really isn't. Like, you just got to not think for like literally 1 second of your life and be like, right, I'm just going to raise my hand. I don't know why I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And raise it. And that is step 1 of a specific goal. But there's goals within the goal that you need to do before you can get to the overall outcome that you want. And this links nicely with the topic of overthinking. You're overthinking that people are listening to you when you ask the question, which makes you feel put on the spot. But actually, ask yourself, when someone else in that room is speaking, how likely is it that your attention is 100% on them? I cannot think of a time that I was in university, that I was in work, that I was in school, where someone put their hand up and everyone's attention, or my attention in particular, was 100% on that person. And when you know and realise that actually people are probably on their phones thinking about what they're having for tea later, thinking about the question that they're going to ask, it becomes a lot less daunting and more like you're just asking one person a question. If that is too much for you, just go at the end and walk up to the person who was talking and ask the question then. Maybe even plan to say, oh, well, I've always got a few questions. Can you ask me about my questions at the end? And that's putting the spotlight on you suddenly, but you can't escape it. So usually when I find that when I'm in like a high pressure situation, you can't really escape from it because it's already happening and you're already in the room and things are already going on and it's started, you're there, you can't just run out the room. So yeah, and overthinking obviously means that you're uncomfortable and your brain is now working because it's in unfamiliar territory. However, feeling uncomfortable and unsafe is a good thing because that means that you're growing. And the whole point of self-awareness is to grow yourself personally, to improve yourself. And so the other side of putting your hand up for the first time is being one step closer to not being scared of talking in front of people anymore, which is what you wanted, or what you should want if you are scared to do that. So another thing that you could do for this, and I mentioned it previously, is do gratitude. So look at things that you did well that day, and for example, the example that I mentioned just now could be a good point to add as a gratitude point once you've done it. Oh, I put my hand up in a meeting today. Oh, I spoke to someone today. I said yes out loud today in a meeting, in a room full of people, things like that. I held a meeting with my video off today, and I've never ever thought that I could do that. Things like this. So I want to ask you to do a quick exercise with me, and I'm going to ask you to write in the comments below, what are your top 3 strengths and top 3 weaknesses? And it's okay to have weaknesses. We can't be a perfect person, but write them in the comments below. And consider committing to a self-awareness habit for the next week, and let me know in my next podcast how this turned out. So now we're going to go over to some questions that we had on this topic. So we have a question from Marcus asking, how can I become way less self-deprecating? I ask because I'm very bad at things like saying sorry all the time. Even for the smallest things, I know many people think that if you say something too often it loses its weight, but I mean it every time I say it personally. Also beyond that, I always beat myself up for saying, doing, or sometimes even thinking bad things. Not bad things as far as life deletion, however. Also, how may one become way less serious all the time? I'm naturally a serious and often literal person, and I find that playing jokes, pranks, or kidding around to be rather silly a lot of the time. I try not to be that way all the time, but it's still something I want to work on. So my question to you first of all, Marcus, is we'll start from the beginning. So what makes you say sorry? So why does something make you feel that you have to be sorry about something? So your thought is that you deserve to say sorry, but where is that thought stemming from? That's a really important thing to maybe find some questions relevant on Pinterest, where you can ask yourself questions surrounding being self-deprecating and maybe try and dig to the bottom of why you feel that way. And set yourself little goals to just take a deep breath when you feel the need to say sorry, and pause a little bit and think, do I actually need to say it in this circumstance? And if you don't say it. Also, like I said previously, one of the things that I do is I journal. And this could be a perfect example of you thinking about the last time you say sorry, or if the next time you say sorry without meaning to, and then saying it before you realised, is to go back and analyse why you said it, the fact you said it, how it made you feel in order to say it, and also what you thought about to make you feel the need to say it. Why do you feel self-deprecating? Has there been anything in the past that has made you sorry when you didn't need to be? Was there a parent that always blamed you? Was it an ex-partner that blamed you? Was it a way that you were raised? A job that you had? Something that you picked up by yourself because you have a specific expectation on how to live? The second bit, you're naturally a serious and often literal person. I kind of agree with you on this. I'm not serious, but I'm very sensible. I don't like jokes, pranks, or kidding around, but it's just, if you're in a space where that's happening and you don't really have much control over it, then definitely just either play along and just haha, like little laugh, haha, maybe not like that, or just once again self-reflect why you feel that way, why you've become a serious person or a literal person that doesn't like these type of things. Has something happened to you where someone was joking around and it ended up not being funny because it was harmful? And maybe even go and book yourself something and go and have a bit of fun. And especially tying in the first point of being self-deprecating, go and do something where you can make mistakes and be unapologetic about it. That could be doing some pottery, painting, just something like that. Just have a bit of fun, try and let your hair down. And if you don't like it, fair enough. If you do like it, win-win. And write about it. Write about the good times and the bad times and how you felt, and that you were less self-deprecating today and how that makes you feel. A time that you lay your hair down and that was the first time you felt like that, and what you did to see if there's a specific pattern that you should be following to feel a certain way, I hope that helped anyway. I'm not sure if it did, but yeah, I hope it did. So we have come to the end of this podcast, and I would like to thank you very much for tuning in, if you have, and listening to me blab on for about 45 minutes. I hope you did enjoy it though, and yeah, I hope you take away some of the points that I made today about self-awareness, and I hope that you all remember to put your comments down below on how this podcast helped you with this. And you can never go wrong with being too self-aware, because I found anyway, I don't know if this is uplifting or not, but I found that the more self-aware you are, the less people can tear you down, because you already know what you're like, so that whatever they say doesn't really make a difference to you. And if there's something that you are struggling with, please go and seek help. If you really do think that it is affecting you, don't let it simmer. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this podcast this week. Sorry it is a bit late as well. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, and give this podcast episode a like. If you haven't as well, please go and check out my other podcast episodes, and also the Journey to the West podcast that I'm currently doing. That should be out in the next few days. Other than that, I will see you all next time. Thanks again. Bye everyone.